Sangvat tamane loke, yepuyena sata abasara Sangvat Tanika honti, te tata honti mano maya, piti baka, sayang paba, Antalika chara, subatayino, chirang digham adanang titanti. After this world evolves, as a rule, there are beings which emit rays of light. At that point, they are made by mind. They feed off of joy. They are self-luminous. They go about in the air. They are beautiful. They exist for a very long period of time. So we meet up with Sangvat Tanika again, but here in its participial form, in the active participial form. And this is the form that is built with the word mana, which we have here. Technically, I think this is a reflective form or a middle form, and this would correspond to the Greek menos, etc. But no matter the form, this is typically understood as an active participle. This is in the locative case. And then we have loke, also locative. I should say these are both masculine singular. And now we have the ingredients for an unambiguous locative absolute. Now, an absolute locative or genitive means that it's not the subject of the main clause. It's absolute, it's separate. Here in this locative absolute, the subject of the locative absolute is loke, or loco, or world, or universe. So the universe evolves, or evolving. With absolutes and participles in general, we can understand them as having a relationship to the main clause, whether it's temporal or concessive or causal. In this case, perhaps causal and definitely temporal. We could even say while the world is evolving, or after the world evolves, or even because the world evolves. It's not clear. The locative absolute does not make that part clear. We have to rely upon the context and the sense. I would say the loosest way we could say this is while the world or after the world evolves. Then we have this word yepuyena, which here in its instrumental form has a meaning like as a rule or according to most, as a matter of course. While the world or after the world evolves, as a matter of course. Then we have the subject, satta, beings. This is masculine plural. We also have Basara Sangvat Tanika. So this compound involves this other Sangvat Tanika that we talked about. And this is in an adjectival form whenever we get these ka endings. It's kind of like an IC ending in English. You can remember it being an adjective that way. This Sangvat Tanika has a meaning of like conducive to, involving, being led to. Sangvat Tanika means to lead to. Lead to a Basara. Now this is a certain class of gods, or devas. Might even stick with the word devas, of shining beings. We won't talk a whole lot about that because really the definition of what this is follows in this next sentence. One thing that I think would be clear probably if you knew Pali but you didn't know this word, this bas part, or abbas, means to like shine forth. Putting this all together, and I should say before we put it all together, we have our verb here, honti. So this is the third person plural, present active indicative. Again, we could say it comes from bhavati. It's a form of to be. I think that what we can do with Sangvat Tanika, because it's an adjective, I think we could just say that there are emitting rays of light beings, or in a little better English, there are beings who emit rays of light. Now, having said that, there could be something in this Sangvat Tanika that we are overlooking in that translation or that understanding. And it could be that after the world evolves, or while it's evolving, these beings, there are beings that are led into this state, meaning that their karma that they've accrued has allowed them to enter into this state. So that's something I will just put out there, gentle listener, and you can decide which way you think is best, or if there's another way to translate this that would capture all of the foregoing. So now if we move along here, we have te. This is our plural demonstrative pronoun. And when I say plural, I should say it's masculine plural, nominative, te. We know it's not the enclitic te, second person pronoun, because that is enclitic, meaning that it cannot come first in the sentence. So we have te, they, and that's of course referring back to sata. They, tata, there or then. So this refers to either a temporal or a spatial point in time. And we might even say they at that point, and that might have a connotation of time, but at that point, we're not really committing to space or time then. They, honti, again, third person plural, present active indicative of to be. They are Mano maya. Now this is a compound. Maya means made, or consisting of maybe. Mano, manas, mind. They are made by mind. They consist of mind. This is an interesting word. We find this in the first and second verses of the Dhammapada. And also, it has the same form in Sanskrit, and it is used as a technical term in Vedanta to describe one of the 5 koshas that cover up the Atman. And that is a very interesting subject indeed. So these beings are mind-made. They are mental, but they have a body. They have what is referred to as a subtle body, not the gross, not as in disgusting, but the bulk, physical body. They have a subtle body, which is made out of mind. Then they are described as piti baka, another compound. Piti is joy. Baka means to feed off of, eating on, maybe nourished by. So these beings feed off of joy. Now I think this is a really beautiful thing to think about. The consequence of beings that feed off of joy must be, I would think that a consequence of that is that they would cultivate joy, that they would want to build up as much joy everywhere as possible. I mean, that would make sense. If we fed off of a certain kind of plant, we would want those plants everywhere. That's not a great analogy because we could be depriving the plant of its life. I don't think that idea is here. They're not robbing other beings of piti, because that would result in a lessening of joy, and that would be difficult. There would be less joy to feed off of. So these beings feed off of joy, and they must cultivate joy everywhere. Then they are described as sayang paba. They are self-luminous. Paba is to light, or is light, radiance, shine. It's not a verb. It's light, radiance. Sayang, self. So they are self-radiant, self-luminous. I would imagine this ba here is related to this bas in Basara. Then we have Antalika chara. This came up in our discussion of the Petavatu. Antalika means between the heaven and the earth, or kind of situated above the land or above the field. Chara means to go about, walking. They go about in the air. They live their lives in the air. Subhatayino. So subha is shining, bright, beautiful. And tayan, being in a state of, being in, they exist in a state of beauty, or we might just say they are beautiful. And this form, tayano, is the nominative plural. And then I take these last 3 words as a separate clause or sentence, which has just been sort of slammed up against this other one, if you will. Chirang digam adanang. So chirang by itself means for a long time. Then we have digam adanang. These words were met with before in the form digasa aduno. Here, dika means long, and adanang is actually the accusative of adhang. And remember, we talked about how the accusative can express the duration of time. This is referring to time already, so we could understand this for the duration of a very long period of time, taking these three words together, one of which is a compound. And we have titanti. So this is the third person plural present active indicative of titati, to stand. And then what follows from that, to stand for a long period of time, is to exist. It should probably also be mentioned that when we come across mental self-luminous beings floating through the air, we could be forgiven for thinking that this might be connected to what in the Western esoteric tradition is called the astral plane. The similarities may be only superficial, but I will leave that for you, dear listener, to ponder.